Don't rage trade just yet. Sit down and strap in for the ultimate Supercoach podcast. It's time to win your leagues and dominate your mates. This is the Dual Position Podcast, hosted by Whisperer and SCAdrianasaurus.
The old Penrith Panthers back-to-back looking for a three-peat have had, a very, very good crop of youngsters come through, but the salary cap system in the NRL sort of halters dynasties, I would say, moving forward, and we've already seen some exits from the Panthers, but we're going to see some more next year as well. They can only keep so many, with exiting players out the door, that opens up new avenues for other players for this year's Supercoach. Oh, look, Ado, I've got the Panthers, after having two fantastic years, still a great year. I've got them in third. A slight regression, losing some key players. Is there some kind of hangover? How do you see the Panthers season playing out next year, my friend?
Well, I'm tipping the three-peat. That's a very outside view on it. I think they're going to go another year, and I've got them in first. There are some things there, though. I reckon, I think Kikau is not the greater loss. I think Appy is the biggest loss that they had out of those two big names. He is such a good, wily, he's just a spark, and he's such a good hooker, always has been, really. And I think that's something that they're probably going to be really worried about this year. Like, can Kenny and whatever they go with it on the bench do the job that we got out of Appy? And also, let's just have a look at Origin time. O'Sullivan came in and did a very serviceable job. I think they won all of those games over the Origin period. So it's going to be hard to finish in first and get another minor premiership. I'm still tipping that they've got that winning culture. And I still think that while you've got Cleary, while you've got Luai, and you've got this, world-class, forward pack, some pretty exciting backline players, I still think that there's not many teams that can run with them.
Yeah. It's a testament to Penrith just to keep rocking up every time and doing it. Origin will be a big, determiner. As you said, you're losing out on Sean O'Sullivan. They've still got Kurt Falls there. If I had it my way, I would pick Burton at 6 over Luai for Origin. So maybe they do hold on to Burton over the Origin period. Hold on to Luai over the Origin period this year. But yeah, times will definitely we'll definitely see how they pan out. You mentioned Nathan Cleary beforehand. Now, no disputing that he is the best halfback option for Supercoach, undeniably. The question is, if you have to roll with one or the other out of Hines or Cleary, are you rolling with Cleary just because of the pedigree and he's done it now for 3 or 4 years for Supercoach, whereas Hines has been half a season at fullback, half a season at halfback, and then last year obviously was his breakout?
Yeah, it is exactly that thinking. You have no doubts that Cleary is going to be top 2 halfback scorers. He might be in second, who knows? But I reckon he has the pedigree that you put him in there, you never stress. He's got such a great floor. And I think he even takes a bigger role. He's such a dominant force already, but you take an Appy out, there's got to be some other creation there, and it's going to go to, Yo probably, Luai and Cleary. I reckon he's going to have a ripping year. I've seen their training videos. He's going to go into this year fully fit. He played in a World Cup as well, so not as much downtime to sort of, fall out of practice. I'm expecting a big year. Hines, I reckon he can back it up, but I can't say that definitively. I think the Sharks are going to probably go down a little bit this year as well. So the jury's out on Hines. It isn't on Cleary.
Does the round 3 bye put you off Cleary at all by swaying towards going with Hines because you're not going to have to rotate him out after 3 weeks?
Well, it is. You've got to take the buys into consideration in all of the picks that you have. If I was going to be sacrificing in the halfback position because of buys, I do know that they've got the 13, together. I would get rid of Hines.
Okay, so yeah, you're happy to roll with Cleary, non-scoring in round 3.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Save a trade in there, if you're going to go with the 2 guns, you're obviously going to lose them both in 13. You lose one, you lose one of them in 3. So there's a couple of rounds in there, but ideally you're going to I would probably be prone to take the AE in 13, just because I've got the two best halves and I won't trade them. It's just zero trades. It just takes a stress out of that area. And when you start getting tricky and sometimes you trade out of Cleary and your plan is, I'll just bring him back the week after. And then the guy that you plug in there has an awful game, loses money, your finances don't work, and you can't get him back in. So I think that I'd just be wearing it. He's one of those picks that you're just picking him and you want him for the entire year. So you just wear the times that he's out.
Yeah, because if you do pick two-gun fullbacks and, two-gun halfbacks, you've got 4 captaincy options there. You can just sort of rotate through every week. Something worth noting as well, you mentioned the round 13 buys with Cleary and Hines. NRL Fantasy have changed their rules this year during the buy periods to have your best 13 players compared to like a full squad. And I think AFL Supercoach has also implemented that this year during the buy periods, having reduced squads. Now, I'm not saying NRL Supercoach is going to change that, but the game hasn't been officially released yet, so there could be change in the background. And if they do opt for that, if they do opt to having your best 13, during the buys, I think that makes Hines and Cleary combination a lot easier to stomach, because then, you're just going to get your best 13 come the origin time. So that's something worth noting. Now, you've put Brian To'o in bounce back. I've decided to chuck him in guns because I do think that he's just going to... I don't think we're going to see prime 2021 Brian To'o, but, the bloke was carrying an injury all last year. We've said this a couple of times. It probably starts the season on the left-hand side, you would say, for a couple of weeks, and then we'll rotate back to the right. 624K, I don't think we're losing money on Brian To'o here at all. I think he's a very, very safe investment, and I think we have a big points increase, and... if the Cowboys didn't have this golden draw to start the season, I think a lot more people would be having Brian To'o in their sides compared to someone like a Val Holmes.
Yeah, I agree. He was definitely unders last year due to injury and probably change of sides. You take a big weapon target out of the team like Kickout, I think they might be a little more prone to go back that other side with Crichton and To'o out there. This year, so I don't really see that as such a big problem for them. I think they will still be probably left dominant, but not as much, because a lot of the good stuff that came for Taylor May and Targo was because Kickout's drawing defenders and then getting an offload, or they're worried about Kickout. I don't think that's going to be as worrying for opposition this year with no Kickout there. And I think they'd actually be more worried of Crichton. He's a big body, and I reckon they'll go right a little bit more. So I've got him down on a bounce back just on, I think there's a big improvement, probably 10 to plus points on prior years. So I'm looking to rock and roll with Brian To'o, if not to start as soon as I can.
Yeah, I'm very, very high on Brian To'o, 624. Fantastic. Someone that's just been consistent year in, year out, Isaiah Yeo. I remember the fond memories of, I think, 2020 when he was available at centre wing. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Very, very, very boring, but very, very safe. He is a 2RF gun. Should punch you out 65 week in, week out. Available just a tick under 700. Isn't as exciting as someone like a Fafita or an Angus Crichton or whatnot, but you're not going to have those weeks where you're pulling your hair out owning him.
No, he's very safe. And someone's going to be taking some ball play from Appy. So, I reckon that Cleary, even Luai, and I think Yo will have more attacking stats probably this year than they had prior year, because you take one big piece out of the team for a creator.
You've put Dylan Edwards here in the gun category. I've got him in the opposite category just because I don't think he stacks up with other fullbacks in the same category. I don't see myself ever owning him. He's been fine for Supercoach. He's not been elite. I just think we're paying overs for the production that we're going to get out of Dylan Edwards, but talk me into him.
Okay, well, I'll do it really simply, and you'll change your mind. Let's talk about his games last year. For the first half of the year, a slower start, but let's talk about his exact last half. The last 12 games of last year, you know what his average was?
Probably something incredible that you're going to talk me into.
75.2 for the second half of the year. So he turned a corner. He has had his injury problems as well in the past, and I think he had a bit of a slow start to last year score wise. But when he hit the ground running, the scores from round 12 onwards includes a couple of tons and a 75 average, which is elite. That's elite, and that's better than Gutho and all. And everyone's like, Gutho was amazing. He was only a couple of points behind him, even with the slow start to the year. If you feel like Dylan Edwards is going to hit the ground running a la the last 12 rounds of last year, he'll average 75. And I'm happy to put another hundo down that Dylan Edwards will average above 70 this year. Now, is that a reason to have him in your team? Maybe not. You probably prefer Latrell and Teddy for sure, but he's better than we give him credit for. And I think the second half of last year, I saw more people bringing him into their teams, and they were like, wow, he's having a sizzling back end of the year. It was exactly the second half of the year, 75 average. So I'm not going to say that he's a bum, because he's not a bum to me, and I think he'll average 70 plus. If you average 70 plus, I think you're a gun.
I wouldn't call him a straight bum. I just didn't really know where to put him. A guy that averaged 66 last year does need to have mention. I'll take you up on the offer. I'll take the unders on 70.
All right. So we're 2 bets now in on.
We need to make a spreadsheet and record these all.
We do.
You mentioned that 75 average from the back end of last year. He is 180k cheaper than Tedesco, and that 75 average was only sort of 3 points difference. I guess it just comes down to, do you think he lives up and continues that form from last year? And I'm not sure if he does. He averaged 66 overall last year for the season. I probably have him pegged around that, similar to last year. So I don't see much value in him. I'd rather pay up the extra and get a proven gun in Teddy or Latrell. And I'd probably rather take a 150k discount and take a gamble on Trbojevic. But I'm not against it. He is someone that I don't really think he ever puts a bad foot forward. I'd have to look at his scores, but I don't think he has really low games. Not too sure if he's got that super elite ceiling in that fullback position. I'd love to have.
He's meat potatoes, isn't he?
Yeah.
And that's why you probably go, well, Latrell throws those beautiful cutouts. I want that guy in there that's getting the big attacking points. He's kind of in the mold of a Teddy, the tackle breaker a bit. You wouldn't take him ahead of Teddy, would you?
No, I think in that fullback position, I'd want 2 captaincy options I can rotate week in, week out. And I just don't see myself ever captaining Dylan Edwards when I have Cleary in my side. So that's probably the reason. Whereas Talon May and Isaac Tago, I'm all aboard this. I'm all aboard the regression. I'm all aboard the second season syndrome, whatever you want to call it. Combined, these two are nearly 1.3 million, 676 for Talon May and 628 for Isaac Tago. I just don't see it repeating. And even if it does, I think that's best case scenario. I think the loss of Kikau is going to be huge for those two. And I am worried about the ball not coming as left as much as it did last year.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's probably going to go back a little less, even if you're going to just say it conservatively, a little less, because there's no Kikau out there. And last year, they started, we were like, Taylor May's an absolute weapon, cheapie of the year, and we loved Targo as well with the duel, and we had lots of duels last year as well. We loved Targo for a time, but remember, they kind of wore down as the year went on, and they became frustrating at times because there was like a lot of 40s and 30s.
Because Kikau came into his own and started taking more of rather than being it as a decoy, they then started using him more as the primary runner.
They've got to be, I think, regression candidates for this year.
Yeah. I don't see them falling off a cliff, but I just think, we're probably 5 points overpriced, and I don't see them as season keepers. If I'm deliberately picking a player I know is going to lose price, I see them as a keeper, and I don't see May or Tago as a keeper. In saying that, I went early on May last year. I brought him in the week that he was named, and it was fantastic, and never looked back. But I don't think I can go there this year for the same price when you can get Brian To'o, who I think has much more upside. In the bounce back category, we've got new recruit Luke Garner. I'm assuming you are tipping him to be playing on that left edge. I know a lot of people are saying, "Oh, what about Zach Hosking?" But no disrespect to Zach Hosking, but the bloke is now, I think, 26. Barely cracked it in the Broncos side that was struggling at the time. Got 2 games and looked good, but I don't see the competition. I think the competition comes from Scott Sorensen, who has proven himself to be very good off the bench. And I think that spot will hold for Sorensen. And I think Garner comes in and, 435k. If you're tossing up between him and Katoa, I'd probably rather take a punt on Katoa. I know I've been against the Katoa chat, but I think he does possess a bit of upside. As a Tigers fan, I've watched Garner. He's a very 6.5 out of 10 footballer. Does that improve in a better Panther side? I'm not sure. I don't think you're going to go wrong with him. I think he'll make you money. I'm just not too sure if it's going to be piles.
Yeah, well, I'll refer back to something you said the other day. You said you could average 40 in that Penrith team, and he's going from a team where you have got to scrap for every Supercoach point you get. Really, he's going to go into this one where there's going to be some served to you on a platter points. So he's going to go better. He's going to get some stuff that he wouldn't have got elsewhere.
But do you think that makes him? Do you think it makes him a must-have? Like I know a lot of people are using that term.
No, he's not a must-have. If you've got if Jack Murchie, for instance, he looks like he's got a bit about him. He's in a good team as well. If Alicia, I'm a big Alicia Katoa fan. I'd be happy to take a punt on him. Tom Gilbert looks like, a lot of people are using him in the front row, but there's actually a lot of middies that could be options for you. So I think it's a real spot where you can go a pod, and I'll guarantee you that in that 400 category, he'll be the most owned out of all of those 400. So if you want to go the road less traveled, he's not a must-have. And like you said, in his career, he's been a 6 out of 10. I'm kind of feeling like because he's next to probably the best player, he's in there very close to the best player, the Origin halves. He's got to get some points served on a platter, and I reckon he might have some 8 out of 10 games just because it's served up to him.
Yeah, I'm not for 1 minute saying that Luke Garner's a bad pick. Most likely will probably find his way into my side at some stage during this preseason. I just don't know if he's this slam dunk pick that a lot of people are thinking he's going to be.
And you look, Sorensen they might just say, look, he's been he's been here for a year now, and he's been outstanding. We'll give him the start, and we'll bring Garner off the bench. It doesn't make sense to me with Luke Garner being the bigger body, a la sort of kick out bigger body. Maybe not as good a line runner, but solid and a good defender as well. And Sorensen was so punchy off the bench. So I just think that Ivan is a good coach, and I think he'll do the right thing for the team, I think.
Yeah. You can clip this up, whoever's watching. Luke Garner isn't a bad pick. I think he's a good pick, but if you don't pick him, I don't think he's going to burn you too hard. I think you'll plug along and maybe make 130K, and then that's sort of it for me. Mitch Kenny, I think his stocks are a little bit better than what people are thinking. I know a lot of people are high on Sonny Luke, and I'm not too sure if that's a price bias thing, if people are looking at it through a Supercoach lens, because he's only 235. But they brought in Tyrone Peachey. Jamin Salmon was there as sort of a staple in Ivan Cleary's side. I would expect Salmon to get the 17, Peachey to get the 14. No room for Luke, who we'll touch on later on. And I think there's going to be some good minutes for Mitch Kenny. I think the ability for him to rotate to the 13 as well. We saw that last year a little bit with Isaiah Yeo giving some spells. Mitch Kennedy at 310. If we were high on Josh Hodgson, as you said off camera, then we've got to be high on Mitch Kenny as well.
Yeah, exactly. He's not the second piece, the little piece in the hooker rotation now next to Appy. He's the big piece. So just on that simple logic, you think that he's got to have a bounce back. I think he could get up to 500K. If you can get him, with a stone's throw of upgrading to a Robson, Grant type, you'll be extremely happy with him. I agree with you, because why would you have someone who can come in and cover you in the 9 and maybe in the halves at a stretch, instead of someone like Peachy who can go in the back line, in the halves, in the back row, and into hooker? He's extremely versatile. And that's the reason why they brought him back. So the simple fact is Kenny probably looks like a fair option. I mean, I prefer old mate there up the Titans, who's got the halfback gig in that sort of price point. Someone put an interesting question about him the other day, that we could have position updates as the season draws closer. Maybe he loses hooker. Maybe they make him 5'8" halfback. There's even talk that that Foreign might play 7 and he might play 6.
I don't think you can lose position. I think you can gain them. I don't think they can take them away unless it's done in the preseason before the game launches, just because I think coding would throw it out. But yeah, I think hooker's weird, because I'm looking at Brandon Smith as a must-have. He'll never leave my preseason side. So that only leaves one spot left, and you've got cheap guys like Hodgson, Boyd, Kenny. Well, then you go up to Robson, Grant, Cook, and I think you go one or two ways. With Cheese being a must-have and locked into my side, it'll be interesting as to how we do our next team reveals and talk about that position. Moses Leota, you've got him 481k in the bounce back category. Are we worried about the progression of Spencer Leniu, or do you think this is a regression from Fisher Harris that would lead Leota to be a better option this year?
Yeah, I kind of thought that he looked a little better as the year went on last year, and he was sensational in the grand final. He's getting better as a footballer, I think, and I really think that he might get closer to top dog in that team. I think Spencer Leniu, he's never been getting, I always expected he's going to get more minutes, but yeah, maybe they share it out. I think responsibility wise, they seem to put a little bit more on Leota last year. And I thought he was the better of the two big props there. Sorry, I know a lot of people are a big JWH fan. No, JFH.
fans.
Yeah, I was doing JWH, another Kiwi. But look, I reckon he's a good player. I think he started to come on last year. I think he's going to go even further this year.
Fantastic. Now let's talk cash cows. We've already talked Sonny Luke. I don't know where the minutes come from personally.
Yeah, I don't know if he's even going to get a run on that bench unless they busted, the gutless dog. We got a dog out of the team. And I don't think they'll do that. They've just re-signed him. So I think they like what he offered off the bench. And Peachy's so versatile that you could bring him on and put him in the back row as, a running sort of,
he can
13 type stuff.
He can cover the centers. He can cover 6 if he needs to. He can cover 9. He can cover 13. I think Peachy's, versatility is too great to leave out of the side, although I don't rate him highly as a Tigers fan. Well, saw what he did. But... Yeah, I just think he gets a bench spot. I think Salmon gets a bench spot. You would think Leniu gets a bench spot, and then probably Sorensen, who makes up the bench. Yeah,
that's how I see it going. And I think it's really hard if you go and plug in your team with a Sonny Luke in there, because you're getting used to your team and it's starting to feel right. And you're like, oh, no, he didn't get the run. And then you've got to make big adjustments, even up to... one of the mid 300 guys. So I think build higher to start with. If by some miracle he does come in and they leave Peachy out and he's the 14, then you could take a punt and say maybe he gets 40 minutes, 35, 40 minutes off the bench. But it's going to be a hard fix if you put him in there to start.
Yeah, that's always been my philosophy. I think we mentioned this a couple of episodes ago. When building your teams, I would build for worst case scenario, build for the more expensive option, because it's much easier to go from a 400k hooker to a 200k hooker than the other way around, and you can move your team abouts. There's been huge raps on Tavura. I'm going to butcher that pronunciation, but available at fullback centre wing, probably not one for round 1, but the raps on him are huge, and a lot of Penrith journos reckon he'll be playing some first grade footy this year, and it's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, that's right. And everything I've seen from him, I've really liked as well. If they get an injury to, one of their backline players, he'll probably be next cab off the rank.
I think anyone, 2 through 5, doesn't matter where. I think he'll get a slot,
or even 1. But they'll probably put Crichton there,
steps back and then he'll come into the centers.
Yeah, so I think he's next cab off the rank. And to start the year, we know we haven't got Taylor May. I think it could be him, and Brian might just stay over the other side. That's not enough for me to start with him, though, because I think as soon as Taylor May is in, he's in.
Yes.
So if there's an injury there, he could be just a nice little downgrade if there's an injury and he looks like he's going to get an extended run in the team, because he looks a very talented footballer. And I think he's first cab off the rank. So as soon as an injury happens, you can cash out on one of your, your fattened cows down to a Taruva, and I'm sure he'll score well and go up nicely in price because he looks a real talent.
Fantastic. Plenty to talk about from the Penrith Panthers. We'll dive much deeper into a few of these guys when we hit the position podcasts coming, in a few weeks. But until then, mate, I think we're going to come back tomorrow. We're going to be talking the mighty Gold Coast Titans. Plenty of mouth-watering prospects from there to talk tomorrow.
Absolutely. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. We'll see you tomorrow.